But when you talk about a true bona fide one, Skip, it's those situations where game's on the line, everything, hey, we need one in the red zone, we're putting it up to this guy. Nobody in the stadium knows where the ball is going in the Dallas Cowboys offense. You don't.
See, this right here is the classic example of don't allow yourself to build up all of this tremendous credibility throughout your playing career as a player with the Seattle Seahawks, the San Francisco 49ers, and then eventually a couple of other teams whenever you were playing on one leg. And then you go and join a TV broadcast station, and then all of a sudden, you throw all of that credibility out the window. I don't know if you guys realize this as former players, but eventually, you're going to need someone to take what you're saying seriously, unless you just want to be looked at as a caricature of an analyst. Richard Sherman fell into this very same pitfall, as after joining Skip's Undisputed on FS1, he has taken his hatred of the Dallas Cowboys to the next level and directed a lot of his ire at one CeeDee Lamb, aka wide receiver one. Now, I showed you that clip at the beginning as a refresher as to what he was saying about CeeDee Lamb. We want to keep this conversation in the proper context. What Richard Sherman said was CeeDee Lamb isn't a wide receiver one. He isn't a number one wide receiver. The argument was never about where does CeeDee Lamb rank in the NFL amongst receivers. It was about whether or not he's a true bona fide number one. And lo and behold, Richard Sherman has had to kind of walk that back a little bit as he's realized the error of his ways. You see, ever since Richard Sherman said that CeeDee Lamb is overrated and not a bona fide number one receiver, CeeDee Lamb has grabbed 30 receptions for 466 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and he's averaging 15.6 yards per reception. Those numbers are extremely impressive, but are they impressive enough to make Mr. Sherman say he was wrong? Turns out, I guess the answer is kind of. He responded to a post that Dez Bryant posted on X and was pretty much saying that, hey, yeah, CeeDee Lamb has looked really great these last few weeks, and if he continues this for the rest of the season, then I would consider him a true number one. See, you were doing so well, Richard. You almost got yourself completely out of this bind. There's nothing wrong with being able to change your opinion after shocking new evidence is brought to your attention. To be honest, you should have learned about CeeDee last year and even the year before that, as the only year that CeeDee Lamb hasn't gone over 1,000 yards receiving was his rookie season, and he was damn close even that season. You can see here in 2023, he's already at 824 yards for the season, and we're only going into week 10, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, though, he had almost 1,400 receiving yards, averaging 12.7 yards per reception with 9 touchdowns, a career high, by the way. And the most important part, was available for all 17 games. See, that's the aspect in this that we're not even really taking into consideration. There's a lot of guys out there that look to be number one receivers, but the biggest ability for any professional player is availability. That's one thing that CeeDee Lamb has been extremely underrated with, is every single game he's been available to suit up, he's suited up, bro. And not only that, he's been productive. 2022 was a good season, but 2021, which was one of Dak's best seasons before the calf injury, he had 1,100 receiving yards that year as well, with an even higher yards per reception at 13.9. And here's the thing about CeeDee. You notice that he had 1,100 yards receiving, but 1,300 total yards that season. And that's because CeeDee chips in everywhere. He chips in the run game. He had 76 yards rushing that year. Oh, and earlier in his career, he even did punt returns as well. So he's available for every game during the season. Earlier on, even though he was a 1,000-yard receiver, he was still also chipping in with the run game on some end arounds, and he was actually doing some punt returns as well. So I'm not even sure where this whole idea of, oh, he has to play like this for the rest of the season before he's considered a true number one even comes from, because by any measure and by any statistic, if you see a guy go for almost 1,400 yards receiving in one season, usually they're a number one receiver. And see, in the original conversation, one of the receivers brought up as an example of a bona fide one was Terry McLaurin. What about what Terry McLaurin has done makes him more of a number one than CeeDee Lamb? If you look at their career stats, CeeDee Lamb has been more productive than Terry McLaurin in one less year. If you look at their stats outside of CeeDee Lamb's rookie season, he's been more productive than Terry McLaurin. And in fact, CeeDee Lamb's best season was better than any of Terry McLaurin's seasons that he's played so far in the NFL. And this is not to knock on Terry McLaurin. He is a good NFL wide receiver. He's also a #1 receiver. But there's no way you can look at someone like CeeDee Lamb, look at his production, and then look at some of the guys you compared him to, look at their opportunities that they're given to make the plays, and truthfully stand up here and hold a straight face while you say that CeeDee Lamb is not a bona fide #1 wide receiver. Okay, I know some of you guys are going to be like, oh, those are just regular stats. You're looking at box scores. Okay, let's take a look at some advanced stats here. We have advanced stats and metrics for CeeDee Lamb. And I'm going to break this down for you to where it actually makes sense to where CeeDee Lamb, while given less opportunities than some of the other #1 receivers in the league, is actually outperforming those opportunities. Let's take a look at a couple of different lines of information here to prove this point. We have advanced metrics for opportunities for a wide receiver. And keep in mind, all these rankings are pretty much with anybody. This is counting any receiver. There are no qualifications. There isn't, oh, you have to have this many receptions or this many snaps. This is counting everyone. So some of the rankings may be a little bit skewed because there may be a guy that's only played a few snaps and end up having like a 60-yard touchdown or something, right? But let's take a look at this. In targets, he's only ranked number 14 in the league as far as wide receiver targets or receiver targets in general. He's only ranked number 14. If you're looking at all the #1 receivers or all the X receivers on all the teams in NFL, that's almost ranked right in the middle as far as targets. And you look at his target share, that is ranked right in the middle for target share with number 16. All right, so those two numbers right there pretty much let you know that CeeDee Lamb, while he is being targeted, he's not being targeted nearly as much as some of the other top receivers on some of the other teams in the league. In fact, he's about at league average for #1 or X receiver targets. So keep that in mind. Then we go down and take a look at the next line of information, and this is going to be productivity. So we went from opportunity to productivity. If you look at this, he has the number 14 amount of targets in the league. But then you look at the receptions. He's the number 9th receiver in the league with receptions. That's ranking 5 spaces higher than the amount of targets, or his ranking where his targets are, which means, understand how these numbers correlate. That means that he's being much more productive than the majority of the receivers in the league when he's being targeted. Okay, that's exactly what that means right there, is when you throw him the ball, he's going to catch that ball at a much higher rate than the other receivers in the league, to the point to where it jumps him from having the number 14 amount of targets to having the number 9 amount of receptions. And if he was just operating at where the opportunity say he should be operating at, he would still be at the number 14 slot in that reception slot. You see what I'm saying here? So he's actually producing a lot more than what the numbers even show that he should be. Then you look at receiving yards. That's just reception. Then you look at receiving yards. He's number 5 in the NFL in total receiving yards off of the number 14 amount of targets. That is extremely impressive. And he's number 16 in target share, which essentially means how much of the quarterback's targets per game are going to that receiver. He's dead in the middle of the league as far as how much of Dak's targets is he giving to CeeDee Lamb during the game. If it was like number 1, 2, or 3, you would probably see this target share up around 40-50%, which means damn near every play he's going to CeeDee Lamb. But that's not the case. CeeDee is just truly making the most out of the opportunities he's given. And you can see that here with the number 9th ranking in receptions, and then jumping up to the number 5 ranking in receiving yards. That's an extremely impressive amount of efficiency he's operating at. That means that anytime he's getting that ball, not only is he catching it more than his counterparts, but he's doing more with it after catching it, or the catches are way more impactful than that of some of his counterparts. So all in all, CeeDee is absolutely balling by any metric that you can look at, and he's 100% not only a #1 receiver, but he's truly taking his game to the next level and entering a different type of conversation. Because to be honest, CeeDee has already answered the whole is he a #1 receiver conversation after last season, when it was truly on his shoulders. Like, the expectations were there. They're like, hey, CeeDee, we need you to be that guy. He showed up. He showed that he can be present and available when he is needed. Now, obviously, CeeDee Lamb has some effort issues, and it seems like he had some drop issues last season, but he's cleaned up a lot of that this year. Since the Arizona Cardinal game, where we saw him give up prematurely on a play that was thrown into the end zone on like a fade route, we have seen CeeDee approach the field with a completely different mentality. And the numbers are backing that up, guys. CeeDee Lamb's statistical rankings through week 9 are absolutely amazing. This is an amazing statistic put out by Outlaw Cowboy over on X. His success rate is first in the league. His 20-plus yard receptions, first in the league. His catch rate, second in the league. His QBR, when targeted, fourth in the league. QBR is different from quarterback rating. Receiving yards per game, fourth in the league. Yards per reception, fourth in the league. Yards after catch per reception, fifth in the league. CeeDee Lamb is that dude, and dare I say, I believe that we may be about to see a version of CeeDee Lamb that's probably been the most dominant 88 that we've seen since prime Michael Irvin. Dez Bryant was absolutely amazing, but I feel like CeeDee Lamb honestly has a higher ceiling than Dez Bryant just because the variety in what CeeDee can do. I feel like he can damn near do anything that Dez can do. Dez was probably a better jump ball type of receiver, but I feel like CeeDee absolutely has that in his bag as well, and there's no slight on Dez, bro. Dez was amazing as well, but this is just a compliment to what CeeDee Lamb is actually doing and the trajectory that he's on. We got to remember, this dude is still young, guys. He's still like 24 or 25 or something like that. This is a young dude. We got a lot of meat left on the bone with this guy, and he's more than proven himself to be just a #1 receiver. I honestly feel like it's kind of disrespectful trying to frame this conversation around just him being a #1 receiver. So Richard Sherman, with that take, that was just absolutely asinine of you to say something like that. It was asinine of you to challenge CeeDee like that. And it really just boggles my mind how these players can play in the league for 10, 15, 20 years in different situations, build up all this ethos, all of this credibility that they can carry with them into their next profession as they talk about the game, as they analyze the game, whatever it is they're going to do, coach the game. And then they go on national TV, join these types of shows, the Undisputed, the Speaks, the First Takes, and they completely destroy all of their credibility by saying stuff that is just factually wrong and was already wrong before he said it. This just further reinforces that when CeeDee is given the opportunity, he's definitely going to make Richard Sherman look like a jackass 10 times out of 10. All right, but either way, appreciate you guys for tuning in. I am so thankful to have not only QB1 on our team, but damn sure to have wide receiver 1 on our team. I think we have some amazing building blocks going into the future with CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Trevon Diggs, and a lot of these other guys. And I'm just excited, bro. I'm super glad to see what CeeDee is doing. I'm glad to see that he's taking that next step and not just being in that #1 receiver type of conversation, but truly putting himself in the conversation with the elite of the elite. If you look at anybody across the league, there's not many guys having better seasons than CeeDee Lamb right now, all right? But either way, y'all know how he's in these videos. How about them Cowboys? Take it away, Pastor.
Calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, am I still the ball? Y'all usually check on me. Listen. I'm still them boys. Hey! Woo! Hey! I'm still them boys.